Hey guys, welcome back to Track 848. As you can see, we're getting ready to join some wires. This video is a prelude to a video that I'm putting together that's going to show you how to hardwire a motorcycle stator to a regulator rectifier. The bike that we're going to be doing this on in my next video is my 2009 Ducati 848. Before I actually publish that video though, I wanted to show you a few options that you have when it comes to joining wires. We're going to start off by cutting and splicing this red wire here. This is an 18 gauge wire, and we're going to use the soldering equipment that I have here to solder that up, and then we're going to use the heat shrink tubing that you see there. Next up is another piece of 18 gauge wire, and I'm going to use this vinyl butt connector. This is the actual connector that I used for my hard wiring project. You have the butt connector on the inside, and then you have the outer protection similar to a vinyl butt connector, but you can also add heat to this later, and it serves as a heat shrinking tube, which really seals up the connection nice and tight. And then finally, we're going to use this non-insulated butt connector on this piece of 10 gauge wire. We're going to cut and splice, and then we'll use the heat shrink tubing on that one as well. I have a selection of tools here, starting with the channel lock wire cutters. I like to use this wire cutter probably more than I do this one and this one. There's also a couple different crimpers here, one for insulated and one for non-insulated butt connectors. Next up is the wire stripping tool here that I have from Craftsman. Primarily wire stripping, but it also has a cutter here. And then here's another very similar tool, a little bit longer, so it gives you a little more leverage when you're crimping. The 12 to 10 insulated here works really good on this butt connector, because it doesn't actually cut into the material there, and I like that. So we're going to use a combination of all three of these today, and then I'm also going to demonstrate how this works. This is very convenient. As you can see, one closure of the lever here strips the wire. So this is a very convenient, quick, and easy wire stripper. You're also going to need some sort of heat source. I have a couple of lighters here that I like to use, but you could also use a heat gun if that's your preference. So we're going to go ahead and cut this in half, and I'm going to demonstrate the awesomeness of this wire stripper here. Just to give you a couple basics on this tool, you can see this stop here will allow you to set the amount of wire that you want to have stripped off. So for example, if I set this all the way to the right and you stick the wire in here, this is about 3/4 of an inch, I believe. So that's all the way over to the stop. I'm just going to squeeze, and you can see how the stripper works. Pulls the wire and the outer coating of the wire apart. So with these longer cuts, you might have to reach down and just pull that off like so. I want to make this a little bit longer since we're going to be soldering, so I'm just going to flip this down, and I'm going to go, I don't know, maybe another 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. You can see right here, we're just going to give it a nice squeeze like that. Lift off, and then I'm going to pull this off. Okay, if you've soldered before, you know there's a lot of different ways that you can initially join these wires before you solder. Some people like to mesh them together like that. I'm simply going to go ahead and just get approximately the same distance here, and then I'm just going to cross them up at that point. Okay, so we're just going to twist these wires up nice and tight, and my goal is to end it at or before this edge of the insulation on this one, and then the same on this other side here, twisting in the opposite direction now. Okay. There we go. Here I'm going to dip this into the flux. I'm just going to spread some of the flux out on the wire, tin it up a little bit. Okay, that looks good. So I'm going to apply the gun underneath here, and that's going to pull the flux down. And as it does, we're going to add some of the solder, and you can see that it's going down into the actual wires. Okay, and once that gets hot, you can see how smooth it flows, and I'm going to call that a good connection right there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and slide the heat shrinking tube over this, like so, and we're going to shrink it up from the center out to the edge. I'm going to have to switch this around. Get the other side. Working from the center outward. And you don't want to apply too much heat. And I would say that's pretty good. Right there. Once this cools down, this is going to be a very nice, secure joint that you could use in a lot of different places. For this wire, I'm going to go with about 1/4 of an inch, and if it's a little bit too long, then we can adjust that if we have to. But okay, now that we have these stripped, I'm going to go ahead and just turn the ends a little bit on both of these. Okay, let's see if that's enough. Actually, it might be hard to see, but we have probably a 1/16 of an inch too much wire. Okay, let's get this butt connector loaded up in the appropriate crimper on this tool. And I'm just going to swivel this around so you can see just to the right of my thumb here, the wire stop. So what we want to do is we want to center this up, and we want to make sure that there's some butt connector on the right side there. Let's simply stick the wire in. I'm going to give this a nice tight squeeze. Give it a pull test. It feels good. All right, give it one final pull test. I'm going to mention this one more time. The heat shrinking tube should go on, if you're doing a real project, before you connect the wires. I'm doing it this way today for instructional purposes only. Okay, shrink this up. From the center outwards. Go to the other side. Okay, that's a nice connection that should last for a long time. Okay, next up is our 12 gauge wire. This is the connection that I used on my actual hard wiring project. So let's go ahead and cut the wire and get it stripped up. These larger gauge wires, you really don't have to worry about twisting them up too much. Just make sure that they're intact. And I'm also going to go ahead and just trim this up to make it a nice straight cut here. This time we're going to go to the 1210 insulated. We want to make sure that the crimper is placed between the wire stop on this side and the end of the barrel down on this side. We're going to stick the wire in, and I'm grabbing at the end of the tool back here. It makes it a lot easier. Just give it a nice firm squeeze. Give it a pull test. That feels good. And do the other side. Pull test. That feels good. Take note that we did not penetrate through the material on this part of the butt connector. We have a nice tight crimp, but we did not penetrate through this. So let's get the lighter out. I'm going to work from the center outwards. And you can see it shrinking up there. And then in just a minute or so, the glue on the inside will start melting. I can see it now. There it goes. All right. That's pretty good on that one. So you can see where this melted, and you can see the glue seeping out of the end here, which is a good sign, and will give us a real nice tight connection. And let's go ahead and wrap up the largest gauge wire that we have, which is a size 10. For this crimp, I'm going to go ahead and use the channel lock crimpers here, and I'm going to use the non-insulated section down here. And just like the other butt connectors, we want to make sure that we're centered in between the wire stop here and the outside of the butt connector on this side. And I'm going to give this a nice tight squeeze. And you can see the result. Okay, let's get the other side loaded up here. Again, I'm going into the non-insulated section of the crimpers. Okay, I'm going to give it a very nice tight squeeze. And you can see that this is an extremely strong connection. Probably one of the tightest ones due to the crimping power that we have with this non-insulated butt connector. Okay, let's get some shrink tubing on here. Another reminder, normally you would do this before you join the wires together. All right. Center outwards. This should shrink up nice and tight since this is a larger gauge wire. Just going to go to both sides. That is a really nice, robust connection that you could use probably just about anywhere.